Hey guys, Dan Turvey here in the Eastmans Gear Lab, and today we're going to talk about mounting rifle scopes and how to properly do that. Okay, so for the first phase, we're going to install the bases. And the thing you're going to want to do is make sure the base that you have is for the action of your particular rifle. The easiest way to do that is contact the manufacturer, tell them what base or rifle you have, and then they'll match a base up for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to Loctite the screws. I use a purple Loctite, which is the lowest bonding strength, and what that does is it keeps the threads from backing out on you during recoil. And so we'll drop the base on, and we'll get this one started. And then we'll do that for the next one. You don't need a lot, just a little bit on the threads, and then it'll spread itself around as you screw the screw in. So now that we've got them both in, we're going to tighten them all the way down. You'll notice we have a torque wrench here, and depending on your manufacturer and their specifications, I usually torque the bases down on non-magnum calibers to about 20 pounds, sometimes a little less. So, and then you just adjust your poundage with this dial here. So we'll get it up to 20, and then we'll crank them down. When you hear that click, that's the poundage that it hit. Okay, so the next step after we get the bases installed is we want to level up the action, and we're going to use a set of Wheeler levels here. And we'll put that on the action screw, and it's got a little magnet on the bottom, and it'll hold itself there. And then we're going to install the barrel level on the end of the barrel. And then what this does is it allows us to get the crosshairs perfectly horizontal and perpendicular with the axis of the bore, which gives you the most accuracy possible out of your rifle. Okay, so then what you want to do when you have the level installed on the action, you'll need a gun vise for this too. You'll rotate the rifle slightly left or right depending on what you need, until the bubble reads level. Then you'll go up to the front of the barrel here, and there's a set screw on top where you can make micro adjustments to gain level up front as well. And once your barrel level reads level, we can take the action level off. Okay, so now we've got our bases installed, we've got our levels set, and then the third step is to install the rings on the scope. Okay, so we're going to put the first half on. This is kind of tricky here. Put the second half on. We're going to drop our screws in. These bottom screws, you can put a little Loctite on them if you'd like to. With this case, we probably will. With the bigger guns, I like to as well. And then you'll just want to tighten these down very loosely, because once we take the scope to the bases, we're going to want that flexibility to be able to get it to marry with the base well. So just a loose setting there. And then we will do the same thing on the front. So now that we have our rings on the scope, we're going to take the scope and the whole assembly, and we're going to put it up on the gun and install it on the bases. And that's that. So just double check once you get the scope and the rings on that you're in the base real solid. If there's any slop in there, slide it forward in the ring till it hits the front of the base. And then you'll want to go ahead and tighten your screws down. Don't tighten them down too tight. You want to leave enough slack in there to be able to set the eye relief on our scope. Okay, so now that we've got the scope on the bases and the screws on the rings aren't set incredibly tight, we're going to set the eye relief. And to do that, you need to pick up the rifle and shoulder it. Look through the scope. And if the view is perfectly clear, the eye relief is good. If you see a black halo or an edge inside of that scope, you'll need to take the scope and twist it forward or backwards, depending, and you'll see which way you need to go. And once you get a perfectly clear view when you shoulder the rifle, your eye relief is set. Okay, now we've got our eye relief set. The last step, or second to the last step, is to level our scope, and that's why we used the barrel level earlier. So depending on the scope you have, you can level right off of the top of this turret, or you can remove the turret cap and you can level right off the turret itself. I always like to level off the turret itself if I can. And so now what we'll do is we'll twist the gun in the vise until our level on the end of the barrel reads level. And now that that's set, we'll twist the scope until it reads level. And now that we do a double check, make sure this is level, make sure the other level is level. So now that we're all leveled up, we're going to take the level off, going to put our turret cap back on, and then we're just going to tighten down our screws. We'll double check, make sure we're at 20 pounds for our bottom screws. Then for the top screws, I like to go a little less than 20, probably 18 pounds or so. They don't need to be terribly tight. A lot of guys have a tendency to over tighten them. So keep them in that upper teens range and you'll be set. Now that we've got all the screws tightened down and the scope's ready to go, the next step is bore sighting, and then we're ready to go to the range. Thanks for joining me on this week's Gear Lab, and for more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.